This is the Sunday stream opening song because the other song is copyrighted. La 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 la. Oh, look, here comes Dog Cat Fox.
Hi, Sky.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Sunday stream, the stream I do on Sundays, because Sunday is the day to stream on Sundays. Hope you're all doing well on this beautiful Sunday morning. It's still a little dark out, but I'm sure the sun will arise eventually. I'm pretty sure. That's usually how it goes. So today I'm doing a sort of, I guess, a throwback to like real Sunday shows on news channels and things where they talk about several different stories at once. Well, maybe not at once, but you know what I mean, like in a row. Yes, that's what I meant. And so today we'll be talking about lunar graveyards, fired Harvard presidents, and Google and ERGs and DEI and stuff. And then after that, I get to hang out with Sister Scribe. Yay, Sister Scribe. But before we get to all of that, who's joining me on this beautiful Sunday morning as I find my words after, this is the first I've ever said anything this entire day so far. I've been up for like 3 hours and I haven't spoken a single word. I just moved through my day, not saying anything because I had no one to say anything to. And now I've decided to get my motor going, so to speak, live on the air. That's how we do here. Quality programming for one and all. Noah Asensio, good morning. Mike R., good morning. Tier Alexander, the gentleman lich, good morning. Mr. E., good morning. Advocatus Diaboli, good morning. And also, thank you, Advocatus, for helping me pin the GoFundMes to the top of the chat box. Apparently today, YouTube has decided that I'm not allowed to pin my own comments in the chat box to the top of the chat box. The little 3-dot menu thing does not appear when I hover my mouse over my comments. Everybody else's works fine. But so thankfully, Advocatus Diaboli helped out by copying over the GoFundMes to a chat from him, and I could post that. So just before I forget, up at the top of the chat box, everybody, the GoFundMes for our friends Twisted Skipster, James Colley, Grisella, and Angry Illinoisian. They or their families in general have experienced some kind of hardship recently. If you take a look at those on your leisure, and if you can donate, please do so. If you can't, that's fine. But if you can, share those out on social media. That would be very much appreciated. So thank you ahead of time, and thank you, Advocatus, for helping out. Shio Gorath, good morning. Who else is here? Did I already say Mike R., good morning? Mike R., good morning. Who else here? Brittany Holland, good morning. And scrolling down. Some Navajo Nation, good morning. Resolute Germ, good morning. Mike Savage, blarg. And Kay Scholl, good morning. Robert Pincus, thank you so much, Robert. Good morning, Scribe and Chat. Happy New Year. Well, Happy New Year to you. And it says in the chat box, let's celebrate their third super on a live stream. Third time is definitely the charm, I guess. Sure. I don't know what I meant by that. But thank you, Robert. Appreciate it. It's very generous of you. Hope you're having a good Sunday. Hope you enjoy the show. A2P, good morning. Who else is here? TC LaChance, good morning. JB, good morning. Meh, good morning. Bishop, good morning. And I think that's everybody I see. If I missed anybody, if you're lurking, if you're in the future, good morning. And speaking of the future, do you know what the future of burial sites is? My house! They're trying to send dead bodies to my house. Because as you know, I live on the moon. See, there's an animated background there of the moon where I live. It's a very short animation. It kind of skips at a certain point. If that gets annoying for people, let me know and I'll switch it to something else. Anyway, yes. This just happened yesterday, or just became public knowledge yesterday. Oh boy. Navajo Nation's objection to landing human remains on the moon prompts last-minute White House meeting. Landing human remains on the moon. Okay, let's go over this. And bigger question is, why does the Navajo Nation have any jurisdiction over the moon? Let's find out. The White House has convened a last-minute meeting to discuss a private mission to the moon set to launch in days, after the largest group of Native Americans in the United States asked the administration to delay the flight because it will be carrying cremated human remains destined for a lunar burial. Okay, now, before we go any further in this, and by the way, I haven't read this story yet. I just saw the headline yesterday. Sending your human remains to the moon for a quote-unquote burial, pretty cheesy. Kind of a cheesy thing. But, when you have the money to do such a thing and you're not around anymore, why not? I mean, it's not like the moon is going to be hurt by it. Or is it? Let's see. Destined for... Wait, did it cut off something in the story? I guess when I printed out this story, it cut off some of the text. Well, that's annoying. Let me, for crying out loud, CNN or my printer or whatever. Now I got to go find the thing to make sure I didn't miss something. Or it was like a subtitle to a picture or something. Let's try this again. Is it? Yeah, it cut off like a whole page worth of text. What? Now okay, fine. I'll just bring up the story live because I'm not going to use my PDF anymore. Fine. I was trying to make it all clean without all the ad pop-ups and things, but, what are you going to do? All right, let's try this again. Because it will be carrying cremated human remains destined for a lunar burial. If successful, the commercial mission scheduled to launch Monday, dubbed Peregrine Mission 1, will be the first time an American-made spacecraft has landed on the lunar surface since the end of the Apollo program in 1972. Has it been? I guess I suppose maybe it has been. But Navajo Nation President, I'm going to try this, Bu Nigren, said that allowing the remains to touch down there would be an affront to many indigenous cultures which revere the moon. We landed on the moon in 1969, and we landed there a couple times after. We tried to land there a time that didn't work out, and we've left several things up there. I think the offense has already been undertaken. But besides which, if simply revering the moon is a reason not to send missions to the moon, well, then I guess NASA just better close up shop. I guess. Quote, the moon holds a sacred place in Navajo cosmology, Nygren said in a Thursday statement. Quote, the suggestion of transforming it into a resting place for human remains is deeply disturbing and unacceptable to our people and many other tribal nations. Well, I'm going to have to ask, okay. Is the planet Earth a sacred place to many indigenous cultures by any chance? I mean, I'm just guessing here that between the sky, the earth, the trees, the animals, that Earth, Gaia, whatever you want to call it, it was sacred to culture. What do we do classically, in one way, shape, or form, with our deceased brethren on Earth? Is that sullying? Okay, the private companies providing these lunar burial services, Celestis and Elysium Space, are just two of several paying customers hitching a ride to the moon on Pittsburgh-based Astrobotic Technologies Peregrine lunar lander. The uncrewed spacecraft is expected to lift off in the inaugural flight of the United Launch Alliance's Vulcan Centaur rocket from Florida's Cape Canaveral space pop-up in front of me. Go away, CNN. Florida's Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. Space Force! Wouldn't it be kind of funny? I mean, sort of like in a clown crying way if the rocket blew up on launch. Celestis' payload, called Tranquility Flight, includes 66, quote, memorial capsules containing, quote, cremated remains and DNA, which will remain on the lunar surface, quote, as a permanent tribute to the intrepid souls who never stopped reaching for the stars, unquote, according to the company's website. Quote, we are aware of the concerns expressed by Mr. Nygren, but do not find them substantive, irate bear. Celesta CEO Charles Schaefer told CNN. I also do not find them substantive. It seems like a pretty weak complaint. But apparently somebody didn't think it was a weak complaint because we're talking about the White House. Quote, we reject the assertion that our memorial spaceflight mission desecrates the moon, Schaefer said. Just as permanent memorials for deceased are present all over planet Earth and not considered desecration, our memorial on the moon is handled with care and reverence. It is a permanent monument that does not intentionally eject flight capsules on the moon. It is a touching and fitting celebration for our participants, the exact opposite of desecration. It is a celebration. It's a cheesy way to make money and propagandize space flight. And so it's a little tacky, but it's also relatively harmless because the moon, it's a giant dead rock. It doesn't matter. Elysium Space has not responded to CNN's request for a comment. Okay. But the company's website describes its lunar memorial as delivering, quote, a symbolic portion of remains to the surface of the moon, helping to create the quintessential commemoration, unquote. Yeah, a symbolic portion because they don't want to put all of their eggs in the proverbial basket. So it's like, hey, you want your relative buried on the moon? Give us like a vial of their ashes and keep the rest because for all we know, something could go wrong in launch and delivery. So, we don't want you to lose everything about grandma in our attempt. Quote, I've been disappointed that this conversation came up so late in the game, John Thornton, Astrobotic Technology CEO said. Quote, I would have liked to have had this conversation a long time ago. We announced the first payload manifest of this nature to our mission back in 2015, a second in 2020. We really are trying to do the right thing, and I hope we can find a good path forward with Navajo Nation, unquote. Well, yeah, but if they brought it up way back in 2015, if they didn't bring it up on the eve of the launch, it wouldn't get nearly as many headlines. I might be being cynical in that analysis, but I could be right. Thank you, JB. You can bury them if give us money, the Navajo. Make a donation to our whatever to ease our offense. You do have to wonder. You do have to wonder if that's not what's oncoming. If some hefty apologetic donation to the Navajo Nations is not oncoming from these companies. You gotta wonder. But I'm still waiting for the White House involvement. Let's see what happens. Dawn of the lunar economy. Hey, land has been sold on the moon for years. You can buy a whole package to get a piece of real estate up here. As I am speaking to you from the moon, where I live. But heaven forfend I die up here. Well, then I'm desecrating something. This isn't the first time. Oh, it isn't. Navajo Nation has expressed concerns about burials on the moon. Oh. In a December letter to NASA Administrator Bill Nelson and Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, Nygren referred back to NASA's Lunar Prospector mission, which in 1999 deliberately crashed a spacecraft into the moon, carrying the remains of former astronaut Eugene Shoemaker. Yeah, when this story popped up yesterday, I could have sworn in the back of my mind, I thought, hadn't this already happened? Hadn't we already had a burial on the moon or something? I thought that had already occurred, and apparently maybe that's what I was thinking of. Quote, at the time, Navajo Nation President Albert Hale voiced our objections regarding this action. In response, NASA issued a formal apology and promised consultation with tribes before authorizing any further missions carrying human remains to the moon, Nygren said. Okay. While NASA is the primary customer on this mission, it's still one customer among many paying to put technology and cargo on Astrobotic's lunar lander. So they weren't in charge of it. Okay. The space agency paid Astrobotic $108 million to develop the lander and carry science experiments to the moon, said Sandra Connolly, Deputy Associate Administrator of NASA's Science Mission Directorate, in a Friday press call. Okay, so now NASA has to piggyback off of corporate money just to get their work done because the U.S. government's not willing to fund it. That's just my instantaneous knee-jerk analysis. It's like, well, we might as well take advantage of this private corporation that's going to send ashes to the moon to do an experiment or two that we can't manage on our own, or we can't get full funding for ourselves. Okay. The space agency also developed the Artemis Accords, a document that outlines what should and shouldn't be allowed on the moon that has been signed by the U.S. and 32 of its allies. Quote, we recognize that some non-NASA commercial payloads can be a cause for concern to some communities, and those communities may not understand that these missions are commercial, They are not U.S. government missions, said Dr. Joel Kearns, NASA Deputy Associate Administrator for Exploration. Peregrine Mission 1 marks the start of NASA's Commercial Lunar Payload Services, or CLPS, CLIPS initiative, which allows the U.S. Space Agency to outsource the launch and transport of its lunar cargo to private companies. The mission is at the dawn of the lunar economy, and the rules are still evolving. There has been human garbage on the moon, leftover stuff from the moon missions and everything else for decades, and nobody cares. It doesn't do anything. It harms nothing. I think the power of the moon is stronger than a couple of artifacts of human civilization. I'm just saying. Quote, American companies bringing equipment and cargo and payloads to the moon is a totally new industry, a nascent industry where everyone is learning, Kern said. Quote, we take concerns expressed from the Navajo Nation very, very seriously. Why? Why? Also, you didn't have a close quote on that, CNN. There's nothing serious about it. There's nothing serious about it. Nygren, who represents the roughly 430,000 enrolled members of the Navajo Nation, says the tribe is, quote, not opposed to scientific progress or space exploration, unquote. Yeah, you are. If we eventually have a base up on the moon, if we put like humans on the moon to live on the moon with, hopefully as a starting point or a staging area for future space exploration missions to, say, Mars or elsewise, eventually someone is going to die on the moon. And their remains, in some way, shape, or form, may end up being placed on the moon. It's going to happen eventually. Now, 10 years from now, 100 years from now, it's going to happen. It doesn't sully anything. It is part of the same creation that placed the earth where it is, if you believe in that. And we bury people in the earth all the time. I'm still waiting for like the exact part of the folklore or mythology that's being besmirched here. Okay, so they're not opposed to scientific progress or space exploration, but continues to hold, quote, profound concerns regarding the lack of oversight and regulation of non-NASA commercial payloads, particularly when such payloads include human remains. And again, CNN, you forgot the close quote. This is becoming an epidemic here. Okay, so it's not that it's some kind of harm to your faith system about the moon. Now you're worried about regulations and oversight? Why? What exactly is their concern? I guess that's the $1 million question here. Thank you, Funtime Bats. Sorry I'm late. Did I just hear NASA could be going private? No, NASA is being supplemented by private interests, which isn't a new thing, I know. But now when we're talking about the moon, the United States government is not willing to fully fund NASA for moon missions and things, at least in the lead up to fully fledged like moon bases and such. So we have to, again, piggyback on commercial interests and enterprise in order to get done the business of human exploration. We all knew that's where this was going. We've all seen Aliens. Some of us have seen The Expanse. There's no way around it. The moon is going to be sponsored by Exxon or something. Once they figure out how to get helium-3 out of there and start turning it into energy, it's happening. It's just the way it is. Welcome to the future. We live in it. Who controls the moon? The Federal Aviation Administration's Office of Commercial Space Transportation is responsible for licensing all private space launches in the U.S. But by law, the office only has oversight in matters involving, quote, the public health and safety, safety of property, and national security and foreign policy interests of the United States, unquote. Quote, the Federal Aviation Administration's role is statutorily limited to ensuring space flights do not pose a safety or national security threat to the United States, unquote, a Department of Transportation spokesperson told CNN. But the executive director for the Navajo Nation's Washington office, Justin Ahastine, I think, calls that argument, quote, absurd. Is that an argument, or is that just a recitation of the legal limits of their jurisdiction? Okay, quote, they're essentially suggesting that you can send anything into space. Does that mean people can send drugs? I'm pretty sure there was a first aid kit, and there is a first aid kit up on the International Space Station. Does that mean people can send hazardous material? Any material sent to space is potentially hazardous because, what goes up must come down. But yes, there have been, haven't we had satellites that have had like nuclear isotopes in them for power and things like that? So the answer is yes, within certain restrictions. The lack of oversight is, I think, really concerning for the nation, as Ahastine told CNN. Wait, I thought this was about sullying the moon's surface with human remains. Yeah, we can send anything into space, conceivably. Many different things have already gone up into space. There's a lot of stuff in space is a pretty big place. So, okay, anyway, the debate raises new questions at the dawn of a race to colonize the moon about who controls Earth's only natural satellite. Well, nobody controls it yet. We got to send up some space soldiers, some moon marines. Then we can control it. Thank you so much, Alan Thyler. That's very generous of you. Thank you, Alan. Oh, I clicked on the wrong thing. I'll get to that in a second, but my mistake, I must read. JB, you know those NASA astronauts smoking crack while watching the Earth rise? You think somebody snuck up something else beyond regular first aid stuff? It's probably impossible. Now, Alan Thyler, thank you so much for the trophy-holding samurai dogcat fox. Oh, dogcat fox.
Wowee! Wow! Wow!
That's a drunken uncle dogcat fox. Thank you so much, Alan. Appreciate it. Very generous of you. Hope you're having a good Sunday and enjoying the show. Yes, who does own the moon? Quote, no one and no religion owns the moon, says Celestis's CNN. Good Lord. Celestis CE. Try that again. Sally sells seashells by the seashore. No one and no religion owns the moon. Celestis's CEO told CNN. Quote, if the beliefs of the world's multitude of religions were considered, it's quite likely that no missions would ever be approved. Simply put, we do not and never have let religious beliefs dictate humanity's space efforts. There is not and should not be a religious test, unquote. I agree. Because all of your religions are irrelevant, Cthulhu will rise and eat us all. Anyway, Ahastine argues that Navajo Nation's intent isn't to claim the moon. Yes, it is. You just tried to claim sovereignty over who can and cannot do anything on the moon. What is your complaint? Quote, we're saying to be respectful. What? We're turning the moon into a graveyard and we're turning it into a waste site. The whole of the earth is a graveyard. Billions and billions of living things are in the earth or mixed therein or been reprocessed and recycled over the billions of years the earth is. What are you talking about? Quote, at what point are we going to stop and say we need to start protecting the moon as we do the Grand Canyon? We don't live on the moon. The moon is going to be a way station. It's going to be a mining site. Just like every other place on the planet. You want to turn the Grand Canyon into a national park? The Grand Canyon. You want to turn the moon into a national park? I'm being discombobulated by this. Okay, so we don't own the moon. We're not saying we own the moon. We're just saying it needs to be turned into a sacred site that cannot be touched by man. Hi, Sunday morning, my brain. Okay, Friday's meeting convened by the White House. So you only saved the last paragraph for the White House? Okay, Friday's meeting convened by the White House is scheduled to feature representatives from NASA, the FAA, the U.S. Department of Transportation, and the Department of Commerce. but Navajo Nation officials have little hope that they'll be able to stop Monday's launch. Good. You don't get to decide what happens with science. No. And why would you wait? If you're not trying to control the moon, why would you want to stop the launch? I'm all sorts of confused. Quote, based off of what we're seeing, and NASA are already... okay. Based off of what we are seeing, and NASA are already having their pre-launch briefing, it doesn't look like they have any intention of stopping the launch or removing the remains. You're right. They don't. Because you don't have say over this, and it's none of your business. I don't know what to tell you. Unless you want to have space exploration ruled by one particular theocracy, you're not stopping anything. And even in this article, now granted, this is CNN's article, so maybe they left something out, maybe they presented something incorrectly. I cannot discern exactly what the complaint is. The moon might become a place where humans have interaction with it. And some of that interaction may involve death and burial. So, okay, well, there's that. There's lunar graveyard. Sort of. I'm not quite sure what else to say about that. That's just all sorts of silly. Now, again, I think just as a gimmick, launching human remains to the moon, if it was all by itself, if that's all you were doing, you just had a rocket and that was I'd say that's a complete waste of time and energy. Right? Absolute cheese, and you're rolling the dice on any of it actually reaching its target because of the risks that are inherent to spaceflight, manned or unmanned. Obviously, this rocket is carrying a whole bunch of other things, including NASA experiments, so it's not just human remains. There is some conceivable utility to the launch besides that one thing. It's still cheesy, but fine. Okay, you want to spend your money on that? You want to do it as a publicity stunt? Fine, whatever, I don't care. Somehow I think the moon will survive, given the fact that it's a dead rock. Outside of that, the Navajo Nation has no, as far as I can tell, coherent argument or complaint to be made about what's going on and why. As was stated, this kind of thing had already happened back in 1999, and somehow I don't think the Navajo Nation's belief system was somehow destroyed by this. And the moon is as much a part of our natural world as the Earth. Eventually, there will be formal burials on the moon. Again, might not happen for 100 years, but it's going to happen. Because once we start living there, it's going to become part of the overall story of human civilization. And I hate to tell you this, you're just going to have to adapt to the fact that we can now land on celestial bodies and leave bodies on celestial bodies. Anyway, let's move on to an article that came out, when was this? On January 2nd. Now, many of you may know now, more so than before, the epic story taking place, or still taking place to an extent, at Harvard University as a result of a congressional hearing that took place last month, wherein 3 presidents of 3 prestigious colleges were asked about whether or not crying out for the genocide of Jews was against college policy. And their answers didn't make a lot of people happy. Now, I'll get to that in a moment. But first, JB, thank you so much. Just thought, what if it was a scam? Like, really can't check they go to the moon or not. As to natives, I don't get it. Whatever their argument was, it was not articulated very clearly, because it was either the moon is sacred to our belief system, do not sully it. Okay. We want more oversight and regulations on this. There's not enough command and control. We want the launch stopped. That didn't make any sense. And what if it was a scam, like they can't really check, go to the moon? Well, I'm sure for the amount of money people must be paying, it's interesting they didn't say in the article how much people are paying to have their loved ones' remains or otherwise sent to the moon. Well, I'm pretty sure that for that kind of money, there has probably been some kind of check, recheck. You can track your remains. It was scanned. It could be a scam. It'd be amazing if it was. But I'm gonna at least benefit of the doubt say that there's a whole bunch of hoops and double checks and verifications that went through to ensure that this is not a scam. But it could be lying. Could be lying. I guess we'll see. I'm curious to know what the insurance policy is on those remains, given that, again, many rocket missions don't necessarily get to where they're going. I mean, for all intents and purposes, I hope that the rocket launch goes well. I hope that everybody who paid things to have experiments done and further science or otherwise achieve their ends. But yeah, blasting grandma's ashes into the moon is still kind of goofy. Anyway, so yes, last month we had 3 college presidents proclaim in various ways what they thought about policies regarding calling for genocide on campus. And one of those was the president of Harvard, Claudine Gay. And a lot of flack was received to these presidents as for their response to that question. But there was a more concerted effort regarding Claudine Gay because a activist, journalist, investigator, however you want to classify him, Christopher Rufo in particular, did some research into Claudine Gay after that event and found many examples over the course of her academic career where Claudine Gay plagiarized other people's work. Up to, I think the number right now is 40 instances over the course of her academic career, including things that fed into her tenure and her employment as president. Well, calls came out for her to be fired over this. These discoveries invalidated her authenticity, let's say, in being president of Harvard, given Harvard's own rules on plagiarism. Well, as you may or may not know, as soon as you start decrying the legitimacy of a woman, and particularly a woman of color, well, the defenders come out. And this was one of the early defenses up on the second. And this comes from Forbes. Because Claudine Gay eventually did resign. We'll read about more of that in a moment. But here's why. Claudine Gay resigns from Harvard. Why black excellence is never enough. Excellence. Remember now, this is excellence. Stealing other people's work without attribution is excellence. By the way, this article is written by Janice Gassam Asare. I did not write this. I'm reading someone else's work. I'm attributing it to its creator. I don't know what kind of excellence I possess for doing so, but anyway, it was just announced that Harvard University's first black president, Dr. Claudine Gay, will resign. Gay has faced heavy backlash over what some labeled as an inadequate response to anti-Semitism on Harvard's campus following the Hamas attacks on October 7th. In addition to the backlash Gay and other university presidents faced after a congressional hearing, Gay experienced more scrutiny after plagiarism allegations. In a letter to the Harvard community, Gay wrote, quote, "It has become clear that it is in the best interest of Harvard for me to resign so that our community can navigate this moment of extraordinary challenge with a focus on the institution rather than any individual," unquote. Wow. Gay, who began her tenure as president in July 2023, will have the shortest presidency in the university's history. Well, if Harvard gave a rip about vetting their candidates, she should have had no history as president. But anyway, Gay's experience is not unlike that of other prominent black women leaders. There's a disturbing trend where black women are promoted and elevated into leadership positions, and despite how qualified they are, they experience hyper scrutiny once they take on the position. Yes, this is, again, somewhat or largely to Harvard's discredit that they did not do an extensive vetting process, or if they did, that they didn't hold their potential president to the same standards they would any student when it comes to plagiarism. I guess we'll never know. The inspection and interrogation that leaders face is even more severe for Black women leaders, especially those who are the first. Now, here's the thing. The first college president to be ousted as a result of that congressional hearing was a white lady. I mean, Claudine Gay's comments weren't any better than that lady, but she just happened to have the added, poison pill of having cheated throughout her academic career and it being relatively easily discovered by outside parties and not Harvard. It's not her fault, everybody. It's everyone else's fault. Try this again. The inspection and interrogation that leaders face is even more severe for Black women leaders, especially those who are the firsts, unquote. Yeah, do you think maybe the drive to have a first at Harvard led to this debacle in part? This was evidenced during the confirmation hearings of the first Black female U.S. Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. Ketanji Brown Jackson deserves scrutiny because so far her performance as a Supreme Court justice has been deplorable. Her attitude and her behavior during the affirmative action ruling alone, her response letter to Clarence Thomas was that of a whining child. Her performance on the bench during the oral arguments for the affirmative action case, which is the one that I first, had an opportunity to listen to her speak, were ridiculous. Some people deserve it because they deserve it. It's got nothing to do with her skin color. But you have to wonder if it doesn't also have something to do with the idea, which is not an unjustified one, that oftentimes the drive to have a first overlooks merit. I don't know why I would suspect that might be the case both in Ketanji Brown's appointment as well as Claudine Gay's. I can't imagine why that might be. As author Mickey Kendall wrote in a timepiece, she wrote it in a watch, in 2022, quote, despite her impressive credentials, Jackson has faced an onslaught of microaggressions, outright falsehoods, and demands for irrelevant information, unquote. Yes, I'm sure none of those things ever occurred to a white male appointee to the Supreme Court. I can't imagine anyone in recent history that faced an onslaught of microaggressions, falsehoods, and demands for irrelevant information. Can anyone think of a male white Supreme Court candidate? I can't think of such. I can't think of such an individual that had their life ripped apart and every comment, element, rumor, or otherwise placed before that person as a potential damning piece of evidence. No, it never happens that way. Jackson displayed an admirable level of coolness and composure despite the barrage of ridiculous claims and criticism from senators. Well, good for her, because as we know, it's only ever happened to her. For Nicole Hannah Jones, oh yes, Miss 1619, being a Pulitzer Prize-winning writer for the New York Times Magazine wasn't enough for the University of North Carolina. What? The university denied Hannah Jones tenure. Oh, that's right. Despite appointing her to the position of Knight Chair in Race and Investigative Journalism at the university's Hussman School of Journalism and Media, which typically comes with tenure. Yeah, why was she opposed? Hannah Jones holds a master's degree from the university and is a MacArthur Fellow in addition to spearheading the groundbreaking 1619 Project. Yes, the critical race theory project, which earned her a Pulitzer Prize. And if you want to say anything else, completely devalue the Pulitzer Prize. Hannah Jones epitomized, quote, Black excellence, unquote. That's not a compliment. Have you read what she's had to say about people over the years? If she epitomized Black excellence, that's damning with faint praise. But her credentials as a highly respected journalist, is she highly respected? Were apparently, did you see the response to the 1619 Project by dozens of academics and scholars on history and slavery. How respected is she? But her credentials as a highly respected journalist were apparently not enough to grant her the tenured position. Parentheses, it should be noted that the university did eventually grant Hannah Jones tenure after much public criticism. Oh, so eventually they were enough. Then it should be noted. You're right. It should have been noted by not even bringing this up at this point because it's moot. But anyway, no amount of wealth, achievements, accolades, or notoriety will offer safety and protection in an anti-black world. Yes, everyone, an anti-black world. Black excellence will never be enough. It is an insatiable chasm that tricks us into believing that all a black person needs to do is, quote, be excellent, unquote, to transcend oppressive systems and structures. But if the stories of Claudine Gay, Ketanji Brown Jackson, and Nicole Hannah Jones can teach us anything, it's that it doesn't matter how much you know, how much you've achieved, or how far you've come. Being excellent for black folks, and especially black women, will not shield you from harm. Okay, so Claudine Gay, despite her excellence, was just thrown under the bus. It was her excellence that did it. Her excellence. She was so excellent, but it wasn't enough because she was black and female. That was January 2nd. Well, now let's take a look at what happened on January 6th. And no, not that which happened on January 6th, but this January 6th. From the New York Times, how Harvard's board broke up with Claudine Gay. Facing intense pressure, it went from standing behind her as the university's president to pushing her out within weeks. But why? Why would they do that? What kind of racists did this? Claudine Gay was in Rome on a family vacation on December 27th when Penny Pritzker, the leader of Harvard's university governing board, called to ask, did she think there was a path forward with her as the school's president? Miss Pritzker sounded weary, and it was posed as an open question. Two people with knowledge of the conversation said. But Dr. Gay understood what it meant. Her 6-month tenure as Harvard's president was over. On January 2nd, she announced her resignation. That marked the end of one of the most tumultuous periods in Harvard's 387-year history. Really? This is one of the most tumultuous? Well, Harvard's had a pretty good track record then. Although I guess it does speak to something else going on in Harvard and academia in general. A controversy that thrust the school into the public debate after Hamas's October 7th attack on Israel and Israel's subsequent invasion of Gaza. Not only did the university's president lose her job, but the secretive workings of its board, the Harvard Corporation, were laid bare. Well, as an institution that accepts public funds from the government, they should be. For weeks, the board had stood by its embattled president as she dealt with withering criticism of her tepid response to anti-Semitism on campus, her disastrous testimony before a House panel, and mounting allegations of plagiarism in her academic work. Miss Pritzker, who had led the selection of Dr. Gay as the school's first black president, that seems to be the cornerstone of why she was selected, was an especially ardent backer. On December 12th, the corporation put out a statement in support of Dr. Gay, citing, quote, our confidence that President Gay is the right leader to help our community heal and to address the very serious societal issues we are facing. But within 2 weeks, the once strong support had begun to dissolve, according to interviews with a dozen people with knowledge of the discussions, including those who had spoken directly with Dr. Gay, Ms. Pritzker, and other board members, or were briefed on their thinking and actions. Okay. They requested anonymity because they weren't authorized to speak about the deliberations publicly. Well, I think they should be. If the Harvard corporate board is funded by public money in any way, shape, or form, I think they should. But anyway, as the board members flew to ski towns and beaches for the holidays, they had a dramatic change of heart about their president. But why? Why would they? I mean, her comments were her comments. Freedom of speech. It's not the end of the world. Why would they suddenly have doubts? A handful of the 12 members of the board, which included Dr. Gay, came from great American fortunes built on name brands. Okay. Others were self-made financiers, philanthropists, or retired academics. All but one attended Harvard. Accustomed to a certain level of success, if they came from great American fortunes built on name brands, they didn't succeed at anything. They inherited all that stuff. But, I mean, the self-made financiers, okay. But anyway, accustomed to a certain level of success, they had hoped that their December 12th statement would signal a new beginning and show their commitment to righting the ship. Yes, we back up our president that we selected. Did you know that she's black? Also, she's the right person to lead us through this time of healing. And then 15 days later, the corporation told Dr. Gay that its members wanted to actively help her heal the campus, which had been racked with protests that disrupted classes and left Jewish students feeling unsafe. I wonder why. Along with the public declaration of support they offered on December 12th, the board members privately asked Dr. Gay to help come up with a plan to turn things around. Two people with knowledge of the discussion said. Over the next week or so, Dr. Gay and her staff created a plan they called a spring reset. One of the people said, come the new year, she would appear all over campus, hold office hours, and express her empathy. There would be task forces to address anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. It'll be a balanced approach. Genocide versus nonsense, but whatever. But before Dr. Gay could send the board additional details, more trouble erupted. On December 19th, new allegations of more than 40 examples of plagiarism in Dr. Gay's academic work emerged, first reported in conservative media outlets. You don't want to credit Christopher Rufo? Okay, that's fine. Everybody knows it who wants to know. When she sent her latest plan to the board the next day, some members told her they liked it, but to others, it showed that she didn't understand the urgency of the expanding crisis, according to people with knowledge of the board members' thinking. Dr. Gay has stood by the overall integrity of her work. The overall integrity of her work? What percentage is the rest? Harvard has said she didn't commit, quote, research misconduct, unquote, though she did offer to make minor changes to some of her prior writings in the wake of the allegations. Yes, all these papers I've had on my record for the last several decades, all these examples of me cheating and lifting fully other people's work and words into my own writings and giving them no credit whatsoever. Yeah, let me have a do-over. Let me take about 40 mulligans. That's how I stand by the integrity of my work. Cracks in the board's support were starting to show. Really? Because of the plagiarism? Oh, I thought it was because her black excellence just wasn't enough to overcome the fact that she was a black woman. Boy, Forbes, maybe you should have waited a few days before making that report. I don't know. Anyway, thank you, JB, again. The news here kept calling them Palestinian officials. I think they said the word Hamas wrong. Sorry for derail. Just makes me angry. Yeah, it's how things have been conflated throughout the course of the, let's call it the Israel-Gaza war in different places. How the mainstream media has leaned into the language used by the people who kidnapped and murdered a whole bunch of people in cold blood and their propaganda system. That's a subject for another day, I suppose. And probably somebody knows a lot more about it than I do. Anyway, moving on. Thank you, JB. Let's see. Cracks in the board support were starting to show. Especially concerned was Timothy R. Barakat, Harvard's treasurer and a relatively new member of the corporation. From early on, he didn't think keeping Dr. Gay was tenable. He told his fellow board members that Dr. Gay's poor leadership and academic conduct might disqualify her from the presidency, those who spoke with him said. Well, it should have disqualified her from the presidency before she was ever given the presidency. Because here's the thing. Harvard, you think of Harvard, you think of, wow, vast history of scholarship and academia and science and research and philosophy and everything else. It's like, who are we going to put up as president? How about this lady? What are her qualifications? Here they are. Let's check those out and make sure everything's on board. Either they did and they ignored all this, or they didn't. There's only two options here, because outside parties with relative ease found all these examples of plagiarism. It didn't take long. It didn't take much. They used available sources to pretty much anybody, and especially anybody in a journalistic field, to find this out within like a week. So there's only two options. Harvard knew she was a plagiarist and didn't care, or they didn't do any vetting at all and were driven primarily by the optics of her becoming president. Whichever one it is, or combination thereof, ta-da! Mr. Barraquette didn't think Dr. Gay's apologies got it right and argued that she was failing to take full responsibility for her plagiarism, according to donors, professors, and others who spoke with board members. At first, Mr. Barraquette was an outlier in the group, but his arguments slowly won supporters on the board. That's probably even more distressing. That slowly won supporters on the board. Hey, however you want to categorize her performance in front of Congress, that has absolutely nothing to do with a years-long history of stealing other people's work to prop up your own academic credentials, which effectively earned you the highest position at your university. That alone, and the obvious, that's the thing about plagiarism. It's pretty easy to tell when it occurs, because you look at what someone wrote on one date and you look at what someone else wrote on a date far earlier than that, and if they're the same thing down to the very word choice that is used, it's kind of hard to ignore. It is possible that two different people could, just by happenstance, use the same combination of words in a sentence between two different publications over two different periods of time and never have read each other, and one didn't read the other. It's possible. So if you just find one instance where you get something similar, you might be able to chalk it up to a spontaneous generation. It just happens. But 40 different examples? Yeah, no. Eventually, those pieces of text become like fingerprints to somebody else's work, and you can see somebody else stealing them all over it. That should have been enough. There shouldn't have been any hesitation on the part of the Harvard board as soon as they had more than 5 instances from across years put in front of them. It just, no. Thank you so much, Faustonia. Wow, thank you. Morning Scribe. In related news, Harvard tops all colleges in the size of their endowment at $50.9 billion in 2023, and annual tuition and fees is nearly $80,000. Wow. And didn't Gay pull down $800,000 in salary? It was 800 nearing 900 or something. It was ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. But here's the funny part, and I wonder if they mentioned in the story. Even though she's had to resign as president, she still gets to keep her professor job and her tenure. Yeah, her tenure, which is built in some part on thieving other people's work. I'm still curious to see how that turns out. Because if they're acknowledging the cracks in her credentials, how does she deserve tenure? Time will tell. Thank you, Faustonia. That's very generous. Appreciate it. Oh, boy. Okay. Let's see. What time do I have here? I might have to skip through some of this article because I do have something else I want to get to before the show's over with. We're just kind of reviewing the board did this, the board did that. Let's see. It's just going over the timeline of decision-making on the part of the board. I want to get to the end here a little bit. Okay. Let's see. The board had been ground down by new allegations of plagiarism, the drumbeat of news articles, and the barrage of criticism and advice from influential strangers and loved ones. Influential strangers and loved ones, huh? Okay. For weeks, the focus of the board conversations had been on finding a way to keep Dr. Gay and end the crisis on campus. But by the day after Christmas, that had changed. people briefed on the event said. The board members agreed that they were dealing with a crisis of leadership. They hadn't agreed on that, apparently, after the congressional hearing and her response. Okay. And that the best path forward for Harvard was without Dr. Gay in the president's chair. Everyone agreed it was time for Miss Pritzker to call her. On that December 27th phone call, Dr. Gay said she would resign. Miss Pritzker gave her the weekend to sort out her exit, 3 people with knowledge of the conversation said. In subsequent phone calls, the two began to hammer out the terms of Dr. Gay's departure. It's not really a departure, including what the Harvard corporations and her statement should say, and an agreement that she would remain on Harvard's faculty. The rest of the details they left to the lawyers. Yeah, so she's caught first giving a very wonky, weak response to criticisms about anti-Semitic comments on campus and whether or not that violates policy. Her and 2 other college presidents, mind you, one of whom had already been forced to resign because of her performance there. But really, it was the plagiarism. Our Forbes author would have you think, oh, well, Claudine Gay just can't be excellent enough because she's a woman and she's black. That's why she was fired. She was fired because anything that is seen as a flaw has to be punished, even though the college bent over backwards and really did do themselves no service by putting up somebody who had faulty credentials into the highest position in the university's hierarchy. But really, 4 days after that article, it's like, no, really, it was the plagiarism. It was the constant examples of plagiarism, more so and more probably coming out in the future. Yeah, but you get to keep your job. We're still going to cut you a paycheck with your tenure, which as well was built on these same lies. I mean, if you ever wanted a golden parachute, you really couldn't ask for anything better. But of course, why would a black woman deserve a golden parachute after being utterly and totally humiliated by her, hoisted upon her own petard, as it were, on the world stage? I don't know. But there you go. Now, yeah, so the future questions are, how many more examples of plagiarism will be discovered? And can Harvard legitimately keep her on as a tenured professor if those same aspects of her record disqualified her from becoming president after becoming president? Harvard is a mess. And really, all of this speaks to the problems with DEI thinking in academia and elsewise, which I've been talking about for 7 some odd years. And now, a little late, I think, but at least better late than never, now it's becoming more of an issue that people have to pay attention to. But here's the thing. Some companies are doubling down, if not tripling down, on their DEI practices. One of those companies is Google, if you can believe it. I know, it might be difficult to believe, but it is. And for this, I'm going to switch over to my regular setup, just on the off chance there's any question about, copyright or something, or that this isn't an original work or transformative work in some way, shape, or form. So yeah, this is a panel discussion from Google that took place just in mid-December, and it's Google Cloud, along with I believe it's their corporate DEI officer of Google Cloud, along with, if I read the description correctly, leaders of their ERGs. Oh boy, you guys know how much I love ERGs. So we will spend the rest of the stream, up until I have to split to hang out with Sister Scribe, looking at what Google has to say in the modern day, at the end of 2023 that saw the demise of affirmative action, and I think, in the long run, the death knell of DEI, as more and more, finally, people are coming to the realization of the evils of DEI. I was about to say D and I. I'm going back to the olden days. But let's see what Google has to say about it as they, in my opinion, continue to flounder in a dying philosophy.
Hi, everyone.
Hello, everyone. Can you guys hear that okay? Let me know in the chat. Also, let me go to the chat real quick because I apologize. I really should occasionally take a break from spouting off and losing my voice. Advocates Daily Scribelight, I want to sign up for her class, Xerox her paper, and turn it in as my paper. You know, there was just another round of completely bogus academic papers that received a whole bunch of awards. A little scandal going on. Yeah, look that up. Look up about. It was something like an academic paper about dogs mating. I'll put it mildly for the sake of Family Hour. Received a whole bunch of awards. It was a totally fake paper. This is a stunt, but a very informative stunt that happens occasionally. I think James Lindsay and his team put it together recently, and just shows again the failings of American academia. Let's see. Mansquatch, plagiarism isn't about the order of words. Plagiarism is about passing off someone else's work as your work. Well, that's what I mean. It's like if you have one instance where you find two sentences where someone's words are either an exact match or an almost match to somebody else's previous work, just one instance does not necessarily a pattern make. You get 2, 3, 4, and that. But yeah, it's it can also be using someone else's sentiments to describe something. We just had this long video by H Bomber Guy on YouTube talking about I forget what's James Sunderland or Sutherland or whatever his name was, who just lifted other people's words from articles about a subject that he wanted to do a video on and made a script out of it. Like large swaths of other people's words. But yeah, it's not just about the order of words. It is about someone else's analysis and work. So you're right. You're right. I was just saying that, you know, it's not impossible that somebody could conceivably use the same order of words in something and doesn't count for plagiarism. I'm not giving anybody a pass here. I'm just saying that it's not impossible. You can't just cite one thing and like, aha, you see that sentence? That's plagiarism. Mansquatch again. I bring up the work aspect because they accused Melania Trump of plagiarizing Mike Obama when all she did was say she loved her children. Wasn't there a speech out of the Trump camp at one point that was basically just a recitation of the Pokemon speech or something? I don't know. Yeah, no, quoting somebody and making sure you attribute the quote and everything else, not plagiarism. Saying you love your kids, again, just expressing a sentiment in a way that is similar to someone else does not necessarily make plagiarism. But anyway, let's get on with Google.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. We're so glad to be here with you today.
Look at all the diversity on that panel.
My name is LaTanya Knox. I lead diversity, equity, inclusion for Google Cloud.
I wonder how long you have in your job, because DEI officers are being let go willy-nilly lately. Also, this guy really wants you to know about something called Splunk. That is a kind of an uncomfortable word to say, Splunk. Is that a company? I don't know.
And we are ready to get this panel started to talk to you about the power of diversity, equity, and inclusion for startups.
For startups, the power of diversity, equity, and inclusion for startups. Okay. Sorry, before we proceed, a few more hellos before I miss out here. Maddie's House of Geek. Hello, Gen T Maxi. Hello, who else is here? Of course, Mansquatch. Mystic Fox 2010. And let me also make sure I get everybody's deal up on the screen real quick here. Gen T Maxi, hello. Anybody else that I had missed in the meantime or hadn't mentioned previous? I hope not. If I missed you, North of, good morning. Yeah, if I missed you, if you put something in the chat, I might be able to tell that you're here and I can say hello.
Our great leaders we have here from Google. So I'm going to introduce everyone and we're going to get into the panel.
Okay.
And then we'll also have a little time at the end for a Q&A. And then also I'll remind you again, but we are going to have a social hour after this. So hopefully you can join us for that as well.
Okay, let's get to the actual discussion, please.
So first off, let's see. Well, that's me. I introduced myself already, so we'll keep it moving. All right, so we have Sujata. Sujata here is sitting right here next to me. Awesome.
The cameraman wasn't sure. The camera was like, which one is the, oh no.
And Sujata is she's a longtime Googler. She joined Google in 2007 as an engineer, so sister engineer here. And today she is the vice president of Core Data with a mission to unlock the power of Google's data.
Unlock the power of Google's data. I thought all Google did was unlock the power of data. Okay.
So her team is responsible for data infrastructure at Google and works closely with teams across the company to serve their data needs. Prior to this, Sujata played an integral role in the growth of Google's AdWords API.
Wait, if she's a VP of engineering at Google, what does she have to do with the DEI? I mean, I'm assuming they will explain it to us, but if she's not a DEI officer, what does she have to do with DEI at the company?
Sujata is passionate about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And
she would have to be to work at Google. I think there is some kind of like general ideological culling that takes place on a yearly basis at Google if you don't agree with DEI.
And is proud to have held the DEI chair for ads
and
serve as a committee member for Core. Sujata is now one of the co-chairs for our Women at, which is a ERG.
Oh, okay. Okay. Women at Google ERG. Oh, good. Thank you, Keeverdam, for the donation. No message. I'll assume it was just, hi, it's Keeverdam. It is Keeverdam. Hello, Keeverdam. Hope you're having a good Sunday so far. SWD40, good morning. Spittlebuggies, good morning. Scribelight, I've been saying stuff and crickets, LOL. Hello, anybody on this, by the way. I apologize. You know, the chat gets by me sometimes. I try to pay attention to it, but I'm also like laser focused on the subject matter I'm looking at, or I'm just off in space pontificating about things.
Women at North America, ERG Employee Resource Groups. I'm going to have to remind myself about the acronyms. Thank you.
Yeah.
How could you forget ERGs and what they mean? I could never forget it. Now that I know, I can never unsee it.
So if there's something I say that you're like, I'm not quite sure what that is, just kind of raise your hand and that'll prompt me to remember to say it out. And so she's, as I mentioned, a co-chair for Women at North America, and she's also excited to have that responsibility to make Google a more inclusive and equitable workplace. So welcome, Sujata.
Thank you.
Inclusive and equitable. Yeah, look at all that equality on the stage. Look at all that diversity. Also, Zed the Snarky, good morning.
All right.
I did not know that intro was going to be that long. Yeah.
It's okay. We'll work it out. Next, we have Anna over here. Anna is the Chief Operating Officer for Google's Devices and Services business. As COO, Anna leads the development process for Google hardware products, the Pixel 7.
The Pixel 7, is that a phone? I don't keep up with Google product releases like some like cultish adherents do. I'm on the I don't own a smartphone. I'm such a Luddite.
With Google's custom silicon, Google Tensor, Pixel Buds, Nest speakers, displays, and cameras, Fitbit smartwatches, and trackers and more, and manages getting those products into the hands of our customers.
Wow, that's a pretty big job.
Anna also drives the end-to-end IT efforts and customer experience across Google devices. She holds several leadership positions across Google and is a member of Women at Google Board.
Women at Google Board. Okay, so she's also a member of the same ERG as our First Lady. Okay.
And is an executive sponsor to OLA, which is Google's Latinx Employee Resource Group.
Hola! Latinx employee. Oh boy. Okay. So we have Women at and we have OLA. Okay.
Anna also sits on Google's Advanced Technology Review Council for AI principle related topics and on the Trust and Compliance Steering Committee.
Welcome. Okay.
Thank you.
Awesome. And last but certainly not least, we have Cassandra Johnson. Cassandra is the VP for Customer Care for Google Devices and Services, part of Google Users and Products, a global consumer user and product support organization. She's responsible for managing key strategic business partnerships across Americas, Europe, the Middle East, and Asia, helping
Is she also part of Women at?
To support Google's hardware and services portfolio worldwide.
Wow.
She is a racial equity ambassador for Google and serves on the Devices and Services Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Leadership Council as the exec sponsor for supplier diversity.
Why are there no men on the panel? I don't see a lot of diversity here. I mean, I'm assuming there are men in positions of authority in this company, right?
And the Black and Advisory Cabinet. Cassandra also serves as the executive sponsor for the Black Googler Network, as the Women at Google Global Co-Chair, and as a member of the Google Black Leadership Advisory Group.
Well, how does she have time to do her job with all this activist work within the company?
Welcome, Cassandra. Welcome.
Okay.
All right. We
Yay.
All right.
Get to the panel.
All right. So we are pleased to have you all here with us today. So thank you so much. And so we're going to get into this conversation about diversity and why diversity is so important to our startups.
Yeah, it's so important that we have a panel of nothing but women. Okay.
So we're going to dive right in and talk a little bit about creativity and innovation in diversity.
Creativity and innovation. Okay. How do you achieve creativity and innovation when merit is, at best, a secondary or even tertiary consideration when hiring or promoting people within a company that runs a DEI initiative? I'm just curious.
So we'll start with you, Anna. So why is it important that startups embrace different cultures, perspectives, and ideas?
Okay. Well, that's not what DEI does. Unless you're going to assign culture to skin color. But okay, so you've dodged the entire purpose of DEI and gone into ways of thinking, ideas, and diversity of thought. If that's what DEI actually promoted, well then, it'd be kind of difficult to argue against it. But that's not what it promotes. And in fact, you are being very disingenuous by starting out the conversation in that way. Let's see what kind of responses we get from these very carefully crafted questions.
Look, I've done, I guess, three or four startups myself, including some that were my own with my sister. And I think what's become really more and more clear is that whatever product you're building, and I'm a product person, I've been doing them forever.
Yeah.
Is that it has to represent your user base, and your user base is really diverse. Even if you don't think, even if you don't think about it that way, one of the biggest things a product person will first start with is who's going to be using my products, under what conditions are they going to be using my products,
and what does their I'll ask, what does someone's culture, and I'll use the word culture even though it's a stand-in for something far more rudimentary. What does someone's culture do to inform you about product design?
And when you start really clicking into those really important questions that are going to be critical for your product to be successful in market fit, this diversity point is really important.
Give me an active example.
And I think that's, one of the biggest things. I will just use an example.
Got an example. Okay.
I don't have it with me, but we do make Pixel phones.
Pixel phones. Okay.
And I remember this was a session. The design lead for our group is a woman. It's Ivy Ross, very very famous person.
If you say so.
And her and I were in a meeting. Well, we ran late to this decision meeting where we were going to talk about sort of the final dimensions of the phone.
So you're bad at punctuality. Okay.
When we got there, they had decided some dimensions. And then her and I grabbed it and we were both like super uncomfortable with it. We're like, that's just like not going to work. Like it's way too wide. Look at how uncomfortable it is for us.
Okay. So your two individual hand sizes said there was a problem. Okay.
So, these are really tiny things. Like we're talking about, millimeters here.
What does that have to do with culture or race or gender or the community at large? This was you two. The two of you had a problem. And I don't know, was it a legitimate problem? Were you just showing up late and trying to inject yourselves into being of relevance to the conversation because you weren't there to begin with? It sounds a little subjective.
But it makes a huge difference. So I think any company that truly...
Wait. That's your example. When it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion, the phone felt a couple of millimeters uncomfortable in your two hands. That's your prime example? That's the first thing that comes to your mind to justify DEI? Are you kidding me?
Thinks deeply about their users and really thinks deeply about what their experience is going to be like, will be way better off from the very scratch. So I always say, the makers should reflect the users. And I think that's the best way that I can summarize why I think it's such an important part for diversity.
The makers should reflect the users. All right. So how do you use the population demographics of your user base to decide who you hire? Am I coming up with an interpretation of that is off base? What leadership or team makeup decisions do you make based on the demographics of your consumer base? I would love to know the answer to that question. Is it hand size?
From the bat. And you can tell, by the way, you can tell by the colors, dimensions, you can tell if somebody thought about it or not.
Yeah, I love that.
You can tell by the colors and dimensions that somebody thought about it. Okay.
That the designer should, the product should represent the users.
Yes.
The product should represent the users? Well, we just had the example of the makers were trying to make it represent themselves. I'm confused. I am very confused.
So really designing with users in mind is critically important. Awesome.
Well, designing a product with users in mind? All right. In what way does culture inform the design? Right? How does the presumed culture or cultures of your consumer base inform product design? That's what I was waiting for. That's what I was expecting, given the nature of the question and the panel that we're on. But there was nothing there. It just happened to be that these two ladies show up late to a meeting and decide to complain about the mild dimensions of the product in their hands, which is entirely subjective, and only the two of them out of the rest of the team that had reached that decision had a problem. If I didn't know any better, I'd say it was nitpicking, but okay, it's your talk, it's your example.
Cassandra, your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think just to add on and complement what Anna said is, I think even though we exist in this global world,
exist in this global world? You mean we exist in this round planet?
global is like right in front of us. And I think, as I owned a company before, a fashion company before, but anyhow.
You owned a fashion company. Okay.
When you think about your audience right in front of you or your customers right in front of you, they come from all kinds of backgrounds and so forth.
And so you almost have to create something that is universally adaptable to a human being, regardless of their culture, their skin color, or something else, so you can achieve utility to the largest audience. But okay, I'm still waiting. How has culture informed you of the design? Which culture informed you of the design of a particular product?
And part of the beauty of that too is they bring who they are and their authenticity and their cultures too. So in order to engage, you have to, just be mindful and just embrace that uniqueness, which I think it just make your product or, whatever it is, services.
She has no idea what she's talking about, does she? This is utter nonsense babble.
That much more applicable and relevant to that customer base. And, you know, the most powerful thing is when you have these different entities, individuals spreading the word of how great your product is in so many different perspectives because it resonated with them.
It's almost like you made your product effectively ubiquitous, and it really doesn't matter whose hand it falls into because you've made it user-friendly to the large majority of the population, regardless of their culture or their skin color. If I take I don't even know what model iPhone we're on at this point, whatever. I take an iPhone 6 and I hand it to a guy in Texas, and I hand the exact same model to a lady in Ethiopia. How is it not possessing the same utility? It does the exact same thing. It has the exact same options. It can be customized in however many ways it's allowed to be customized to that particular user by language or otherwise, sure. I mean, if they came out and said, you know, our product design is informed by trying to adapt our displays, our UIs, to as many different languages as possible, I'd be like, okay, well, there's an example of, you know, there are different idiosyncrasies between languages and communication and this, that, and the other. So trying to make sure that our product performs the same for someone who's an English speaker versus someone who's a speaker of another language or something much more exotic. That's our goal. I'll be like, okay, that's interesting. That might be an interesting example. Why aren't we hearing something like that? I'd accept that example. We're not hearing that example. We're hearing millimeters worth of hand size comfort, and I used to run a fashion company corporate speak.
Like, that is just so amazing.
Oh, that's awesome. So making products that are impactful for the user.
Oh, wow. Golly, we're thinking big here, guys.
Yeah. Well, awesome. And Sujata, your thoughts?
I think they've really covered it all.
She did. She covered it all. Well, then I roll credits.
The only thing I would add is, like, I think the basic frame of a startup is all around innovation.
Well, conceivably, if you're doing a startup, you're trying to find your footing within a market, right? And bring in something that the competition doesn't have, usually. You know, you got a spin on it or something, or there's a gap in the market locally or something. Like, okay, yeah.
Right, you are working on new ideas that nobody else is working on, and
or just a different angle on it, or, you know, again, you've just seen a gap in the local market or something. Yeah, okay.
And I think this is where your diverse perspectives are what is going to drive that innovation. If you don't have people with different backgrounds, bringing different perspectives, you're going to be an echo chamber.
Yes. Again, if we are valuing the diversity of thought, then I don't have much to say. But is that what DEI actually does?
I can tell you that. And I think if you want to innovate, you want to move fast, you want to be agile, you want to be adaptable, I think you got to embrace the different cultures and bring people from all the backgrounds so that you can build what the customer needs. Basically.
Get out of your bubble. Yeah.
I love how we're almost devolving in the syntax of DEI. When I first started looking at these corporate promotional videos and things back in 2016, 2017, you'd often hear backgrounds, cultures, perspectives used as placeholders for race and ethnicity, because the ultimate goal is the aesthetic. Speakers in the early days didn't get that explicit about it because I think even then they were wary of the fact that they were treading on thin ice when it came to laws, whether they're American or otherwise, Title VII specifically in the United States, and equal employment laws elsewise. But as time went on, as these corporations and these companies kept saying things like this, and there wasn't any backlash, they weren't being sued, the government wasn't coming down on them, they became far more confident in what they were saying until eventually, and I've chronicled this a zillion times, they came right out and said, oh, we want to hire these types of people based on their race, their gender, their orientation. That's what DEI is for, because, and then they would tie in perspectives and value of thought to skin color or gender or something else. Well, so far here, this really feels like a reversion, because it feels like we're being very cagey with what words we use to describe this. So I'm wondering how long this is going to last. I don't know that we can watch this entire thing, because it's a half an hour long and I'm pausing all the time, obviously, because I have to. But I'm curious to see, the longer this goes on, how long does it take for them to finally tell us the truth about what determines and what defines someone as diverse versus not diverse?
Yeah, awesome. I love that. The power of diversity in that. And so we're going to talk a little bit about what this looks like in action. And if I put back on my strategic consultant hat for some years ago, one of the things that we used to do when we were designing products was actually bring in folks who would actually use the product, right? So we'll have folks.
What? A focus group? Wow, what an innovation. I wonder if anybody's ever thought of that before. Or...
focus groups and things of that
nature.
Focus
groups. Yeah,
so we could really tap into what was the product like in their hands, right? What was their true user experience? And they will give us feedback.
Wow, it's an amazing concept. I'm sure that nobody who's ever watched anything on TV has never heard of the concept of focus. Anybody who watched the first couple episodes of Mad Men?
Good, the bad, and the ugly to help us design it better.
Wow.
So I want to get your thoughts on that in terms of what this may look like in action when we talk about whether user designing with diversity.
Wait, what does a focus group look like in action? Is that what you're asking? What?
Yeah, I can start with that. I think for us, one of the things we do, and just keep in mind, we do software and hardware, right? That's what our products are. They're both.
Yes.
We have what we call this development process. Many companies have it. If you're a startup, you probably don't have something formalized, but you are going through some process, whether it's agile, waterfall, whatever it is, but you are going through some process to develop and decide, like, when is your product actually ready?
Yes, it's true. There's research, development, testing. Yeah.
And so one of the things we've thought about is, for us, for example, we have very particular gates. To just give you an example, one of the early ones is okay to concept, where, to Sujata's point, you want somebody to be unbridled, thinking about the maximum, most beautiful, exceptional thing they can come up with.
And then whittle it down through the crucible of reality and pragmatism. Yeah.
But at the end of the day, that unbridledness needs to sort of come down to something that's actually, we can make and we can ship, and it's going to work, and it's not going to burn people, et cetera, et cetera.
What does this have to do with DEI?
And so through these gates, we've put these questions, these very specific gate deliverables, if you will, that talk about this point. Where are these considerations happening? Did you do this? Is your product serviceable? Is your product in how many languages? What is the dimension of your product? What are the colors? So
you're big on dimensions of product. That was your big win, is that this pixel needs to be 3 centimeters smaller. Yeah.
It starts sort of forcing, because it's so easy, it's so overwhelming when you're developing a product, but this breaks it down into sections of what are decisions you can't go back in time and fix. And so it'll force you to basically kind of down select and make those decisions over time.
Yes, the order of operations, development process. Yes. Okay. I mean, if someone who's never dealt with, product design or testing or QA or anything else, I suppose this might be informative. Okay.
So to me, actually thinking of diversity as something that you are doing, not just as a moment in creation, but a moment in every single gate that goes through.
That's not the diversity. That's not what diversity means in DEI, and you know it.
Is a really big differentiator in how your product is going to show up.
Oh, I love that. So taking those kind of stage gates and looking at it like from a concept perspective and all the way through delivery, and saying, okay, what's our checklist? What are the things that we need to make sure we're doing?
I don't mean to be conspiratorial here, but I have to wonder, panels like this, where we're talking about the word diversity in a way that would be acceptable under legal analysis, if this isn't part of a process of trying to transition away from what DEI actually has been doing all these years and try to make public statements that soften the blow or insulate accusations of wrongdoing. I really have to wonder now, because this seems very, I just have a suspicion. I just have a suspicion that this might be a kind of propaganda campaign to sort of move away from what DEI has been all these years and redefine it again.
To keep this in mind.
Yes. And when we don't do it right, she knows.
Let's talk about that. And I can add on to Anna, because then after, to Anna's points, once you develop it and then you look at go to market, you really have to look at what countries, what cultures are you going to be in.
Yeah. Okay. Like I said, word choice, translation models, things like that. That might be the only thing of a utility style that makes any sense for you guys to bring up culture in this. And so, good, you brought it up. Great. What else does DEI have to offer that isn't and hasn't already been part and parcel with business and product development forever? Nothing you've brought, focus groups, design process, translation models. Yeah. What has that got to do with DEI? Nothing.
And I'll give two great examples. Some of our products in EMEA, our European market, they have certain features that are similar to North America and so forth. But with the, with the advantages of search and Google and everything, people find out what features they have and so forth. And they're like, no, I want the features that are on the North American model or whatnot. And then you have the, those customers in APAC who they are very detail oriented and so forth. And they want to know step by step what every feature provides and so forth.
Okay. So communication with the customer based on culture and language. Yeah. And again, that has nothing to do with the DEI process. That has been part of commerce since time began. This really does feel like transitional propaganda. I know I've got my tinfoil hat on, but when I listen to corporate speakers speak as often as I have over the years, the fact that they are just talking about anything other than actual DEI processes or philosophies and just regurgitating out the softest interpretation of diversity in basic work process, I gotta wonder.
So even once you create the product, how you present it to the market really varies, and you really want to connect with those different customers.
What do you mean to tell me that advertisements for dish soap in Japan might be quite different than those we see in America? Oh my gosh, do you cater your marketing to different cultures in different ways? Wow, there's innovation talking there. That's the fruits of DEI.
I love that. So is it fair to say that maybe you start with, I'm going to call it a base model or minimal viable product, whatever we call that, right? And then we build on and tailor for that for each country.
Are you going to tell me that this very basic element of product development is what we do at a company that develops products?
Based on whether it be language, design, and things of that nature?
Exactly, because it's the smallest thing, to Anna point, that could be a huge item. And that's
huge.
Why, like on our team, if you look at it, I like to say we're kind of United Nations. We have people who are from Europe, from APAC and so forth, but they bring that voice in because.
Oh, they bring that voice in. You mean they bring in a familiarity with the market and the culture and the advertising campaigns and things like that? Wow. Yeah, that is actual, actionable, and valuable, quote unquote, diversity, but for a very basic and fundamental utility of product design. You're not talking about DEI, and it's showing. Thank you, Faustonia, again. Wow, a whole panel to say so many words. Ergonomics, and added a dash of diversity and culture. These are the first in the unemployment line. No value added here in product development. It is something, isn't it? It is something. In working so hard to try to justify DEI by using the most basic concepts of business and product development, they're showing that there's no, where's the innovation? This is like a panel discussion on product design and delivery 101 from some of, if I'm interpreting the titles correctly, some of the top executives in Google in different areas. And this has to do, DEI does what for this? Employee resource groups does what for this? What does their participation in the DEI culture of Google have to do with any of this? How does it inform any of it? How does it improve any of it? We've only been given one active example, the size of a pixel in two women's hands. And beyond that, translating into different languages or advertising for different cultures. It's quite remarkable. They're not doing themselves any favors. You're correct. They are showing their lack of utility in the company by not telling us why any of their extraneous DEI work somehow makes them better at this than someone else.
Because they are living it day to day. And I think it just helps us level set to say, wait a minute, have we missed something? Or yes, let's double down on this and so forth.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so, Josh, I'm going to take us to the next question and have you start there if you don't mind. And because we've been talking about design and the product itself, but then we're going to talk a little bit more around why diversity of thought is important in solutioning.
They really are. They really are. I'm not going to leave this thought. I'm not going to leave this thought at this point. They are trying to redefine DEI into something that is not controversial. They're trying to redefine DEI into something not aesthetic, but actually meritorious. At least on the surface, at least rhetorically. This is something I have to mark this. This is significant. If this is the kind of messaging that Google is putting out about DEI within their own shop now, if this is what they want the world to know or think, how they think about diversity, equity, and inclusion, this might be a bellwether for what we have coming down the pike, because the legal liabilities to companies that have practiced DEI for years are not going away. And all they can do now is either quit cold turkey, phase themselves away from liability, or double down. Now, I thought by the title of this presentation that Google is just doubling down, but they're not. It seems as though, and again, just my assessment, it seems as though this panel discussion signifies a shift in messaging, a shift in definition, where they can still say they have DEI as part of their culture, but they are redefining it into something less threatening for themselves. Again, maybe this is tinfoil hat territory. Maybe I'm going off on a tear here. But after years of looking at this stuff, this really does feel like a regression back to more safe footing when it comes to messaging about this.
And decision making. So this really turns the conversation about our people, right? So can you tell us a little bit about that?
I think we alluded it a little bit. I think it's when you have people from, say, different backgrounds.
Backgrounds. It's always backgrounds, right? What is a background? Define for me a background.
Going to bring different perspective. You're going to get the breadth of the perspectives. Cassandra was just talking about like training models. If you're training models on a very small subset of data, which is not representative of your customer base, it's going to be skewed. It's going to have biases from day one.
Describe for me a diverse team member. What constitutes a diverse team member versus a non-diverse team member?
And so really like thinking about like, it helps creativity. It helps you bring those diverse perspectives, right? As I said.
Diverse perspective, diverse background, generic terms for things, no specificity, but now honoring diversity of thought. Again, very significant shifts in language.
You're otherwise going to be in an echo chamber because, you're all thinking the same. If your people like you in your team.
What do you mean like me? I'm going to keep asking. They keep dodging the specifics. I want to know what constitutes a diverse train of thought.
The like me bias is what I always call it. You're going to be thinking exactly the same, and nobody's challenging the status quo, which means.
Right, because again, what do you mean like? You've got 4 women up on that stage. There's no diversity there. How do I know you're not all thinking the same? Because you're all women. Or are you talking about something else?
You're not stifling innovation in some aspect. And so I do believe that it's going to help you make faster decisions.
You do believe it's going to make faster decisions? Or aren't you all operating on data? Don't you know that it helps you make faster decisions?
It's also going to help you make better decisions.
And you have evidence of this. How?
And that will truly push the boundaries of innovation in that.
I love that.
You see how they just keep repeating the same few phrases and words over and over again in different combinations?
Absolutely. I think you just triggered something that for me is super important.
Oh, trigger warning.
I think for many of us who study how to really bring more inclusivity into everything we do.
Except these panel discussions.
I think that this concept of belonging is a really important one.
Oh, DEBI. You didn't mention Debbie.
Right? You can be represented and not feel like you belong. And
what do you mean by represented? They keep dancing around it. I'm waiting for it.
That's pretty common, actually. I can speak from personal experience, both good and bad. But what I will say is that I feel like how it really comes back to the product is this way. I feel like for belonging, one of the easiest ways for people to belong, to feel like they're belonging, is that you teach others to basically inquiry, like be curious. If you don't understand something, like, hey, Anna, I don't understand why, you do this. Well, I'm from Latin America, blah, 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 big da, da, da.
I'm from Latin America. What?
I can explain a lot. And that person didn't know, but they were courageous enough to basically have the inquiry.
I don't understand. I need an example. I doubt I'll be given one.
And I think that is the biggest piece that I think Sujata was trying to, to me, it really resonated, because when you have different people, the inquiry increases. And when inquiry increases in product development, your product 100% will be better.
No, different people doesn't increase inquiry. An open-minded workspace increases inquiry. People feel free that they can ask questions and things. I've been in plenty of work environments where there have been plenty of different people, but, the boss's word was the law of the land and there wasn't any room for questioning. Either you established an environment where people can ask questions or people can offer ideas, or you don't. It doesn't matter how many different people you have there. That's an aspect of corporate culture, not how many different people you have in the room.
So if you're sitting around, I would just say in your startups today, and everybody agrees and there's no questions and you're just moving, I would argue that that is a sign that you do not have enough inquiry in your team and probably not enough diversity in your team.
Oh, well, define diversity. They can't get away from it. They keep using that word. They have to define it. They have to quantify, what are you talking about, enough diversity?
Because there should be drawn out debates on product development, and people should be super passionate about their products. So if it's really quiet and nice, maybe that's something to check.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, taking it as its own thing, she's not wrong. But that has nothing to do with DEI assessments. Nothing. I'd love for them to take us through the process, their current process for DEI hiring. I really would. How do you determine from one person to another a diversity of thought?
I love that. So debate is good.
Debate is good. Inquiry is good. Inquiry is always good.
Okay, why are there no men on the panel? Why do you keep jumping around your definitions? Why don't you have any active examples of how DEI actually fed into the product creation process? I mean, having a guy who lives in Europe be your European marketing manager and having a guy in the South Pacific be your South Pacific marketing manager, that's not diversity. That's not DEI. That's just making sure you've got somebody on the ground who knows how to advertise to a particular marketplace. All right, so far we have the measurements of a pixel in someone's hand and having on the ground, native speaking, familiar with the culture marketing executives in different parts of the world. Those are the only two examples.
Yeah, absolutely. Would you like to add something?
You know, I would just say one additional aspect that complements to John and Anna is the fact that a lot of companies, especially startups, I think they have this very kind of like, I like to say, to whom much is giving, much is required, and they want to give back. And I think that set up those programs or, you know, to reach out into different communities is so amazing and powerful to make sure that when you establish and set it up, you really are making a difference in that community and what.
Babble, pablum, babble, nothing. What difference have you made in a community? You bring it up, give us an example.
Whatnot. And I know Anna and I had the honor of working when we were going through COVID and we were trying to do some products in different areas and so forth, you know, and going through like the George Floyd incident and whatnot.
You want to list off any other historical events and what that has to do with anything?
And I remember we had one of our Googlers who...
one of your Googlers,
when we were looking at like our suite of portfolios to give to like small minority-owned businesses.
Oh, suite of portfolios to give to businesses on the basis of the skin color and or ethnicity of its owners.
Thank goodness he had the courage to speak up because we were not going to include one of our products. And he was like, yes, this product is important for this community.
What product? What community? If you're going to bring up this example, why not highlight its purpose by telling us what it was?
And here's why. He had shared that his brother had been incarcerated.
His brother had been incarcerated.
And he said this could be the difference between him being able to be successful, you know, in the community or his high probability of going back and being incarcerated. So
wait, whoa. Wait a second. Some yet unnamed Google product and or service was going to make the difference between a guy not committing crimes or committing crimes. I really, really want to know what this anti-recidivism Google product is. Okay, please tell me, what product has Google developed that will stop criminals from becoming criminals again?
So I think just having that, you know, having those individuals of your team who can just not just speak their experiences, but speak the truth for different communities.
No. His experience. Oh my gosh. Okay, Sister Scribe is leaving her place in 5. That means I got about 20 minutes, so we'll give it another couple of minutes here and then I'll start wrapping up. What are you talking about, lady? No, sir, and I'm not being facetious or joking. I really want to know what she's talking about. I want to know what product or service was going to make the difference in this guy's brother's potential of committing crimes again. That would be an amazing story. Steven Spielberg's amazing stories. Faustonia says, Scribes, thanks for finding these glittering gems of insanity, probably at the cost of your own mental health, I'd imagine. I wouldn't see these if not for you finding these. You know, it's as I said before, it's once in a while I come across something that speaks to me on a level that in other circumstances it might not. If I hadn't been watching this DEI stuff all these years, this thing might just be a boring talk of people talking gobbledygook corporate speak, which we've seen before. But in this particular instance, and I don't mean to belabor the point, but I'm going to keep on this because I think this needs some attention. As high profile a company as Google is, as much hay as they have made over the last 7 years in particular about their diversity efforts and how their aspirations are this, that, and the other, and as much as they have touted their DEI programs, ERGs and otherwise, the fact that we have all these high-level executives on a stage there to discuss DEI, and they are not actually discussing DEI, but instead trying to reframe it into terms that are as basic to business as a pencil is, I think, significant. I think it's noteworthy. Now, maybe I'm being hyperbolic, maybe I'm overreaching here, but I am curious as we go forward and I find more of these things in the future, if we don't see this becoming a trend where they're trying to revert and reframe DEI into something effectively innocuous. And yet there are still hints of the poison tree. I might have to do a part 2 on this because I'm just too curious to know how far this goes and how much this structured conversation lasts.
Can just, I think, elevate what you do and how you do it in a way that can be so beautiful and impactful to different communities.
No, okay. I want to know. I have got to know what Google product was going to make the difference between an ex-con going the straight and narrow or returning to a life of crime. I one day hope to have the answer to that question. I would love to know what that is.
Oh, I love that. So you're basically expanding beyond designing, for your direct consumer market, right?
No. You didn't design. No, wait. You weren't designing anything. You were talking about including a portfolio of different products or services specifically to minority-owned businesses. But then one guy came up and said, hey, my brother, the criminal, who is such on a razor edge of going back to a life of crime, please include this doohickey to prevent him from doing that. A doohickey that already existed, not something was being designed for ex-cons. Unless you want to give us the details of what you're talking about, because I have no idea, but I'm dying to know.
Looking at how you also benefit the community. So designing
a community. Is the community a bunch of razor thin recidivist ex-cons?
Right. Actually, in that case, the product was the same already. Yeah. It was just a use case we had never thought.
Right. You didn't design anything new. What was the use case? What was the product?
Thought about. And the use case came to be because of the pandemic.
What?
This was
What? Wait. The use case. Wait. Okay. I might have to stop here. This is a good stopping point. 17:20 on the video. I might do a follow-up on this tomorrow or Tuesday or something. I'm too, we'll call it 17 minutes just to keep it even. So 17 minutes on the clock. This is too fascinating to me. And this is about as geeky. I can't believe it. I'm a DEI geek. Do you guys realize this? I am such a DEI nerd that I can notice massive differentials in rhetoric when it comes to DEI, such that I get all excited when I'm not hearing what I expect to hear. What have I done to myself? Oh, God. 7 years of this. Why? The walls of reality are crumbling around me. All the same. Thank you, Alan Thyler, again for the thank you. Happy Dogcat Fox. Oh, Dogcat Fox.
Wow. Wow.
There's a Sinatra Dogcat Fox. Thank you, Alan. Appreciate it very much, your generosity. Hope you've enjoyed the show so far. A couple more hellos, and then I will wrap up. Payar D. Bayar. Good morning. Resolute Germ, if I didn't already. Good morning. Datura Jones. Good morning. Anybody else that I can spot? Here we go again. All right. Sextus Megorian, guardian of old Phyrexia. Good morning. That sounds like an enemy out of like a Conan story or something. Advocate says Google bail bonds. That'd be great. That'd be great if Google did have bail bonds. A Scanner Daphne, good morning, if I didn't already. You're ridiculous lunatic. Good morning to you. Good morning to you. Good morning to you. Anybody I missed? Renovatio, if I didn't already say. Good morning. Google Grass. It's an app that lets you rat out other homies to the cops so they don't send you back to the slammer. And Bridget. Good morning. All right. Well, everyone, if you couldn't tell, the first two articles I went over were kind of blah, 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 but really, the pièce de résistance was Google, and it seems like the laundering of DEI. I think that might be what this is. We'll see. Again, maybe I'm overreacting. I need more than one example to call it a pattern. So the coming months of 2024 will tell us, because there will be plenty more discussions about DEI. If this is exactly what's taking place, not just Google, but other companies too will have to start laundering their DEI practices to make them cleaner in front of a jury, potentially, allegedly, maybe, sort of, just my opinion. Anyway, everyone, thank you so much for joining me. Hope you enjoyed the show. Moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on things. Even though everyone here is so well behaved, you have very little to do. Everybody who donated, either to myself or to the GoFundMe's pinned at the top of the chat box. Again, thank you, Advocatus Diaboli. Thank you guys so much for your generosity. As well, speaking of generosity, and I say this every once in a while, but I don't say it enough, if there is a content creator out there that you appreciate, whether it's me or anybody else, please, if you find something about their content that you like, or you watch a video of theirs that you appreciate, share it around on Twitter and elsewise. And when you can, when you are able to, be sure to tag the creator in your sharing, because inevitably they will see it. And I bet you, dollars or donuts, they will appreciate it when you do, just as I do when you share out my stuff. And I try to, as best as I can, as soon as I know that you've done so. I thank you personally, because I do appreciate it. You guys are our best algorithm. Programming note, I am scheduled to appear tonight on the Midnight's Edge After Dark channel for the weekly shit list at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. This week, we'll be talking about our top 5 favorite villains from drama and or action movies. We had to be very selective on this. We couldn't do fantasy movies or really out there comic book movies or sci-fi, although there were a couple exceptions made because there was some low-level sci-fi that was still acceptable. So that is what to look forward to tonight, Sunday, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern on the Midnight's Edge After Dark channel with Tom Connors, Gary Ambrosia. I think Clobbering Time is going to be there. Toxic Man Flu, Sagacious 6, I think, is going to be there. Andy Masterson, probably. Anyway, look forward to that tonight. Otherwise, I might do a part 2 on this. Keep an eye on my Twitter at scribe_light. Or, before I forget, and I always seem to, because I get rushed and everything else, if you'd like to stay in tune with things on my Discord server, let me get a Discord link for you in the chat right now. Hopefully this will work. There's a Discord link. Also, a Satsu 2 cents. A wild Satsu 2 cents has appeared. Let me get to that in a moment. If you'd like to join the Discord, just click on that link. You'll find yourself on the Say Hello channel. And in addition to saying hello, you have to say the secret word. The secret word will tell me that you actually watched the stream. And today's secret word is Google Cloud. That's 2 words, but all the same. I'll know that you watched the show if you say Google Cloud or Lunar Graveyard. Either one I'll accept. They're both pretty cool phrases. Well, Lunar Graveyard is probably cooler. But speaking of a Satsu, something I should do more often, but I don't do often enough, and I know it's a little bit out of date, but I'm sure Satsu will correct me before I leave completely. This is my friend Satsu, aka Chef Tyrone, founder, owner, and CEO of Oshi Fried Chicken LLC, featuring a new line of seasoned flour mixes. Chef Tyrone's seasoned blends are the perfect gateway to delicious fried chicken or any other protein you might want to use them on. These recipes were painstakingly tested in Tyrone's home kitchen to bring you the fantastic flavors that you and your family can enjoy. The current flavor lineup includes original, spicy, and lemon garlic herb. You can buy individual packs of your favorite flavors or save some money by ordering a variety bundle all through the online store. Go to www.oishifc.com and order today. And by the way, this is not a sponsored video. Satsu's just my friend. Anyway, everybody, I hope you all have a good rest of your Sunday, rest of your weekend. Hope you have a good week ahead of you. I hope you're all safe and well. If you are not well, please get well soon. And I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.